Hey, everybody, this is John McLaughlin.
This is Dave Barnes.
And welcome to Dadville. Dadville is a podcast where we talk about life, love, and the pursuit of awesome dadding.
This week, we had a really good friend of mine named Isaac Kirk on the show. Isaac is one of the funnier... He's up there... He's up there with my funny friends. You're in there.
Well, he's up there because he's very tall.
He's also so tall.
I felt so protected.
He is. What is he? 6'5"?
I don't know. He seemed like 6'11" or 6'14".
He's that height. I've talked about this before. He's that height that every time I see somebody that tall, they always look taller the next time.
Yeah,
I see
every single time.
It's like,
yes.
He keeps getting taller. But Isaac has become a dear friend of mine. He's so funny. He's a great actor. He does a bunch of improv stuff here in Nashville. One of the reasons I love him too is he's so intentional. Like I love my friends who are dads. John, you're this way, where I feel like they're not just kind of getting through life being a dad. Like Isaac is always up to some adventure, hijinks. He's always got something planned with his kids, and so I'm always so inspired hearing him talk about just kind of what they're doing, because it's always like, we went camping. And I'm like, you took your kid? I still don't understand why people voluntarily camp. It's literally making your life worse on purpose. That's how I think about camping.
Let's take all the luxuries and drive away from them.
Let's take all the advancements in culture and civilization over the last 200 years and purposefully go backwards.
Camping is it's like the relationship equivalent of saying, hey, sweetie, everything that we've built over all the years of our marriage and the ways we communicate and what we've learned about each other, let's forget all that for a weekend.
Yes.
In the wilderness.
Yes, and let's use 3 words to communicate everything we want to say. But I love that. Another part of the story which we talk a lot about is Isaac is an African-American dude. So he grew up in the South, which is, I'm always so fascinated with my friends who grew up in just a different experience than I did. So it obviously factors a lot into his growing up. And he has so much wisdom around that space. As this stuff has sort of come to the forefront over the summer, I think especially for myself being white, my white friends. I don't know if you feel this way, John, even though we've talked about this a good bit, but it's just made me that much more aware of my color, how it's affected culture, and I'm so thankful for my friends like Isaac that I can sit with and really just say, hey, like, talk about this. How do I need to think about things? He's become kind of one of my most trusted friends for that kind of advice and help, which is a big reason I know we wanted to have him on too, is just to kind of share wisdom on what his experience is and sort of open a little bit more or pull back the curtain a little bit more on friends that have gone through that and how we can help love and encourage and and be just privy to what we're doing wrong.
Privy to the things that we're oblivious to.
Amen.
But he was great.
He also, I think, this is up there with me. I mean, the Tony Hale episode with the swimming, but I'm already going to start laughing. But when Isaac started talking about mowing the yard.
Oh, the drive-by. I'm so fascinated with it from a logistical perspective.
Oh my gosh.
There's so many holes in it. Like,
literally.
I don't want to give anything away.
Oh, gracious.
Although I think the title of this episode is Lawnmower
they may know it. Yeah, I think they know it. But
it's like you're on the lawnmower. There are multiple kids on the lawnmower, so it's already moving slower.
Yes.
It's struggling.
Yes.
It's fighting the decisions that have been made.
Yes.
Already.
Yep.
And then the BB guns have been shot, and then you're trying to get away.
Yeah.
You should all jump off and just run.
Yeah. He doesn't. Which, speaks, and I'll say this sort of to conclude this as we get into the episode, but I think one of the things that's great about Isaac, too, and we talked about this, I saw him last week, and we were kind of talking about this, but he's such a big believer, as was his dad, in that actions have consequences. We talked about that. Yeah,
that's a big theme in
at
this.
dinner the other night, and he talked a lot about that. But to your point about the lawnmowers we're talking about, like, I think that's a really challenging thing for us as parents, is really trying to instill in our kids, which Isaac is really dedicated to in his parenting, is, hey, you can make a decision, but you need to know there are consequences for that decision.
Yeah.
And how to sort of live in that sort of weird space with your child where you're trying to empower them to be a human.
Right.
And give them a space for that, but also realizing, like, but you can make this, but hey, what happens afterwards, you gotta live with.
Yeah, too. Which I think is that was a good lesson for me, because I feel like my go-to is like, okay, I need to come up with a speech.
Yeah.
Every moment here needs a speech. Let me stop them from making the mistake and give them a speech.
That's right.
And Isaac, I feel like, was kind of like, no. They're not listening to your speech.
No.
Let them make their decision.
Yep.
And then feel the weight of it.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. I was really inspired by that. But it was such a great time with him, and I'm thrilled for everybody to get to hear this. But here's our interview with Isaac. Have we talked about Hip Hop Evolution yet?
No.
That show?
No.
Man, I watched an episode and a half last night. This is just embarrassing, but I didn't realize that Lil Wayne was in the Hot Boys.
Oh, yeah.
I literally just thought he came out of nowhere.
No.
They did the deep dive. The show does, I feel like we talked about this, the show does such a good job of kind of going regional and like what each region has contributed to hip hop. But they did a big thing on New Orleans last night. And dude, I knew that Master P had. Do you know anything about that story with No Limit Records?
No Limit Soldiers.
No.
So basically,
I only know Master P's. Maybe it's his first record, my freshman year.
It would have
of
been
high school.
Yeah,
I know that record really well.
Yeah. Yeah. But like, what's so fascinating about that guy and how much of a genius he was is he literally they put out. Oh, I want to get this right. 27 records, 34 records the first year that they
what? Oh, the label.
No Limit. Literally, it was in the 20s for sure. It may have been low 30s. I can't remember the number. But anyway, he did it all. So he had this house. He was so smart. He basically went around New Orleans, found all the most talented MCs and producers, brought them into the family, and then they had a house that had like 4 rooms, and the guys were always producing beats and tracks, and the rappers would just rotate. And so, like this one girl, Mia X or somebody, I can't remember what her name is, but she's like, I did a record and like I did 16 songs in 2 days, you know, and so what Master P would do is he'd literally be like, all right, cool, there's your record. Now we put it out, and who's got the next? Cool, you got a record. We're just putting them out. We're putting them out, and so and I think like, dude, the streak for platinum records with him was insane, and he owned all of it, and he did a distribution deal with the major and never did a record deal.
Yeah.
So the guy who knows what the dude's worth. But then Cash Money was the other crew from New Orleans, which was like Juvenile and, you know,
Turk.
The Hot Boys, Turk, yeah, and all those guys. But I just didn't realize, like, that show is just so – and then they get into 50 Cent. and I didn't know anything about the mixtape culture at all.
Yeah.
And that was fascinating. Anyway, it is so good. It's so good. It's so good.
I think I only watched the first maybe 3 episodes.
Yeah.
Of that. How many are there?
Gosh, there's 4 seasons of 4, so maybe 16 or something.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it is.
It was fascinating.
My gosh.
I didn't know any of that stuff, and I loved how they went to like that neighborhood in Queens, and I wish I could remember the guy's name, but like he's just sitting in the park, and people are walking by, and he knows everybody.
Oh, everybody. Oh, that's Africa Bambaataa.
Yeah.
Is that? Yeah, all those guys like that though. That's the thing that makes me last thought. That's the thing that makes me the saddest about those shows though is they go, and maybe that's true of a lot of music, but like, you know, they'll go to Lil Wayne's spot or whatever, and it's like a castle,
right?
But then they go to these guys.
OGs.
Oh yeah, they're like living in some high rise in Queens with like a couple cool things like on the wall or pictures.
Yeah,
but they are getting none of them.
No.
It is like those guys just feel for them because everybody respects them. Like all those guys pay tribute to them, but nobody's like writing them checks.
And that's a lot of the underground battle rappers where the culture of hip hop kind of is now. They're like, yo, like y'all should pay dues or let us get in on this. And like, you're not commercial enough. Sorry.
Dude, that's
love what you do.
Right.
Can't market yet.
Well, and this last time I'll say that was what blew my mind about Lil Wayne because basically I just didn't know any of this stuff. But he said they're talking about, Juvenile was kind of the star of the Hot Boys, and Lil Wayne was always cool, but everybody was like, yeah, he's just cool. He's kind of funny. And then when he started, so he put out, was the Carter first or?
I think he had something before the Carter.
Yeah, I did too. I can't remember.
99 Degrees or something.
Something, yeah. So that came out, and everybody was like, yeah, it's cool. Like, he's cool. He's good. But then, this is so fascinating. The mix tape culture, basically the whole point of those is you get it'd be like, I'm trying to think of what it'd be like in our world, John. It'd be kind of like your mood record. It'd be like, hey, what's the thing you just really like doing? You don't want to have to think about or worry about how commercial it is. And it's like, okay, just do a bunch of those records. But what they do is these kind of battle rap or underground DJs would just make tons of beats and send them to these guys who are kind of stars and be like, just let's have some fun. And so they just get up and either freestyle a whole song or just do all the weird stuff they can't do on the commercial albums. But they say that, with 50 Cent, he kind of changed the game because the mixtapes became more successful than the albums. And then when Lil Wayne came up, like he put out like 10 mixtapes in a year or something insane.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody was like, it'd be a lot like your mood record. It was like, I didn't know he could play piano like that.
So this would be like Lil Wayne rapping over someone else's beat.
Yeah, that they're just sending.
They're
just sending him, or like what they do too. I found is they'll take like popular songs, and because nobody could really follow the money trail, they take another hit, pull the vocals off, and redo it as like, here's what I would do with that beat.
Yeah.
But it was fascinating because like everybody's like, he went from like, oh, this guy's really funny and he's in this little Houston band that's all cool, to like, he may be the best rapper alive. Because he put out, like, they said he put like 100 songs out in a year, 100 and something songs in a year. And they were all so incredible because it was like, he would get on the mixtapes and just do whatever he wanted to do as opposed to worrying about, which is so funny to think in hip hop, which makes sense because you had huge pop hip hop hits. But like, producer would be like, man, that's like, to your point, like rap battle guys, it
doesn't work in the studio.
It doesn't sound like Mace.
Yeah.
Or Puff Daddy or something that sounds like a hit,
Yeah.
It sounds like some dude's rapping.
Yeah.
Man, I wish that people did that in other genres. Like, how cool would that be if someone took, like, Craven You and, Maroon 5 just did a whole other song on top of it.
I do want it. I had a moment. I had a little moment of clarity where I was sitting there like, what is the version of this in my world? Like, what's the thing you just don't worry? And because the biggest thing was, it was just for,
it was just for them.
It was just for the streets, which I'm trying to sound cool, but that's literally literally like it was for street sale and consumption, passing around to your friends.
I love that.
Yeah.
And
it's so pure.
And so they didn't look to make money, even though they would, because obviously they sold them. But it was more about just getting your name out. And 50 Cent and Lil Wayne both talk about, like, you just wanted to flood the market. Literally, you wanted. That's when Lil Wayne put out the 100+ songs. He's like, I just needed to be everywhere all the time, everywhere. And like some of those ended up charting. Like a couple of the 50 Cent ones charted because they just had so much consumption.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think it is interesting to think about, our world. I'm like, I just wonder what if you're just like,
That would be fun to even do with, like, get a couple of our friends together and, like, just try it out.
Yeah, just go.
It'd be a blast.
You should do that.
It could be horrible. And you know what? If it's great, it's great. If it's terrible, it's still kind of great.
It's still kind of great.
If it's in the middle, then we move on and never talk about it again.
Yeah, we act like it never happened. Okay, Isaac.
I think that's it.
Thanks, man.
It's been a blast. Glad I could contribute.
I'm blessed to be a blessing. Okay, Isaac, I am glad you're here.
Glad to be here, man.
I'm glad that you're here. I'm really glad that we get to hang out, first of all, because I feel like anytime we hang out, I heavily enjoy our hangouts. But also, I'm glad you're here because I like you a lot.
Thanks, man.
I also want to say I feel protected in your presence.
As you should.
I feel like you're probably, I don't know, 8 inches
6'5".
taller than me. You're 6'5".
6'5", yeah.
I'm 6'3", so you're a little bit taller than me.
Yeah. I got you.
If I'm standing on this table, I'm 6'3".
You're standing on his shoulders.
I'm still somehow shorter than him.
If you backpack him.
Yeah.
Is that a thing? If we call people backpacking, somebody just backpacks you?
Yeah.
Like Yoda's you? There it is. That's
Mandalorian. I like it. Yeah.
There it is. So, Isaac, one of the things that I think is really interesting about you is I feel kind of like you're a unicorn because you're from Nashville.
Oh, yes.
Like, and I mean, these are your roots. This is where you're from. So, where'd you grow up in Nashville? What part?
So, born in Brentwood.
Forget that.
Yeah, I was born into the pretty comfortable life. And then my dad got serious about Jesus, and so we went from riches to rags.
Which isn't that funny? That if we're really doing it right, why does it sort of?
Yeah,
that's kind of the way it should go. I think, sadly.
You can talk to my mom about all of that. So I was born in Brentwood. Then we moved to Donaldson, and some of our from I guess the age of 8 to 13, and then they went into Bordeaux and bought their forever home when I was 13. So they've been in the North Nashville corridor for probably 21 years now. 21 years.
Gosh, that's crazy.
Yeah, and now North Nashville's blown up.
Yeah, right.
For good and bad, but they have been there, and it's where I kind of cut my teeth in life.
Literally. Knowing you probably literally cut your teeth.
Oh, man. Stories on stories on stories.
and then you have how many siblings?
I'm the second oldest of 8. So
Jeez,
I have 3 sisters and 4 brothers. Yeah.
So y'all kind of started a cult sort of out there.
Absolutely.
If you're looking at the numbers, it looks like the move to Bordeaux and then sort of like the proliferation of children.
Like, now we conquer. Go for it.
Now you come back into the city and conquer.
Yeah. More or less, yeah. And that was that Bordeaux move was kind of eye-opening for me and all of my siblings.
Yeah, Brentwood to Bordeaux is no joke. Because y'all's spot is in the woods.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And you moved there when you were 13.
Yeah, I was 13. Yeah.
So that's 7th grade?
Yeah. So, and I was homeschooled. So,
okay.
When you leave comfortable white America and then you move to all intents and purposes uncomfortable, you don't know how good your life has been. And then you show up and you're like, oh, cool, other black people, and they're just like, no, we don't do that, bro. Like,
for real, that was your experience.
Oh yeah. Oh, a black homeschool family in Bordeaux. Yeah, there was a monumental learning curve. A monumental learning curve.
Because I was going to say, a move in 7th grade. 7th grade is hard enough.
Yeah.
Let alone a move in 7th grade.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought maybe the homeschoolness would protect you from a lot of the stereotypical hardship that would come from a move during that time, but maybe not.
You would think yes.
Right.
However, once you have that many kids and then nobody sees you anywhere and then they just see you outside, certain questions start to pop up like, oh, we never see you all at school. We don't see you at the gym.
Oh, wow.
We don't see you at the community center. Like, what's your story? And then if before they ask that question, they've already endowed that narrative with 1,000 different theories.
Right.
And so then it's just trying to swim upstream to kind of find your footing in a very, very beautiful, hilarious, hard neighborhood.
So did y'all? Because I think I've met all of your siblings.
I think you've met all of my siblings.
I have to. Okay. Did y'all sort of roll together? Were y'all like your own crew or?
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. So y'all were close.
Yeah. So starting in Donaldson, like we realized that, we're very different from most families. Like people looked at us and were like, we're the Huxtables. Like that's what they thought when they looked at our family. Mom, dad, beautiful family. Great. Oh yeah. But when white kids see you homeschooled, the narrative is, you must have got kicked out of school. You must be a bad kid. Not alternative school, just, you're a bad kid. And their parents, once again, they haven't actually communicated or built a friendship. So that narrative is like, there's a family just moved down there. They're great athletes, but they're homeschooled. So like they probably got kicked out of school.
What just a great sentence, dude. They're great athletes, comma.
And that is an asterisk that has followed me my whole life. So
that is hysterical.
So in Donaldson, we would really just kind of be our group, and we would play. We were our own best friends, worst enemies, and core competitors.
Yeah,
right.
And John, I'm the runt of my brothers. I'm 6'5", and I'm the runt. So imagine your younger brothers just kind of towering over you. You have to instill the fear of God at every possible opportunity. And so other kids really wouldn't, like when we would play sports and we could be on the same team against kids in the neighborhood, the game would last 15, 20 minutes tops because we didn't know how to play nice.
Right. Oh, dang.
Right.
Because with each other, y'all were having to
there's no submission. It's cry, blood, stop,
Snack.
snack,
Repeat.
repeat. So we just thought all kids played that way. So
I wondered why you punched Dave and I both in the face when you
Right when you walked in.
it's just a
not
greeting.
dominance.
It's a greeting.
dominance. It's a great. That's actually the nice greeting in y'all's family.
Yeah.
So was it a different experience in Brentwood?
Not really, because my parents built a nice home, and so we really didn't have a lot of neighbors. So when you moved to Donaldson, that's when we had like neighbors.
Yeah, you
And
were
so
more
integrated into a
Yeah.
community. And I learned so much from living in, I guess, the suburbs, just about how life kind of flows and works, kind of observing, like window peeking of, oh, okay, so they get up, they go to school, then they come back at 3:30, and then they get to play, whereas I can wake up, do my schoolwork, and just kind of go get it. So I've always kind of had a unique balance in life through observing, because I've never lived a traditional life.
That's so funny. And two, I mean, I can't imagine too just the day to day when you have that many siblings, the day to day shuffling of where you are and how you fit and how you relate to your parents, because there's so many of y'all, and how you.
Hey, my mom runs a super tight ship.
Oh wow.
So
Which she would, I was gonna say it's either got to be chaos and bedlam or like the army.
Army,
Yeah.
Yeah.
all the way. Like we were the Navy SEALs or the Green Berets, whatever the hardest branch of the Army is. That's what Margie Nail ran. Like beds made, you were responsible for what your day. We had little schedules. We had dish weeks. We had certain things that we had to do over the course of a day, and you were responsible for that. And my dad's not a terribly empathetic man, so if he came home and then your things weren't done, there wasn't a conversation or an opportunity to plead your cause. It was discipline. So,
Yeah, there's no time for the conversation.
Yeah, there's no
You
time.
can't have 8 conversations
No.
when it gets home.
Okay, I really want you to speak this, because this is something that Annie and I are talking about right now with our kids. It's kind of like, what would the discipline look like, and how do you do that? How do you do that as a parent, where you kind of establish like,
So, we got good old fashioned whoopings.
oh yeah,
That's
you did.
that's what was handed out.
What would it be? What was the instrument of choice? Hand?
Ooh,
switch,
no.
belt?
We were, as I'm 6'5", so we
He had to tie you down.
yeah, the hand went the way of the
buffalo.
dodo bird when we turned 6, 7, 8.
No, because y'all were already just so big.
Oh yeah, like we're just.
That is so funny.
I mean, true to lore, like my dad's from Texas, my mom's from Texas. My dad is 6'4", my mom was 5'11", so we were just big kids.
Yeah.
So if my mom was whooping us, like it was like a belt. It was just a good old fashioned belt. As we got older, it became whatever was in throwing
Within
distance. Yeah, and my mom is a deadly aim, like just sniper. But my
And
dad.
you're becoming a bigger and bigger target.
Oh, and I
So-
see, and you would try to turn sideways, but she
got
anticipates that, and it's like bending, like just scop, pow. But my dad, he realized that, and we made this mistake, I guess, when we were, I think it was 11. Me and my brother went outside. My dad had been painting the garage. It was a big project, and he had put a ceiling fan in the garage, and it was 4 or 5 hours. And he was like, "Hey, the garage is empty. I don't really want y'all playing in here." So of course we started playing in the garage immediately, and then the fan. We always cut the fan on, so we cut the fan on, and we started playing like handball. My dad loves racquetball, so we got it. And we were just kind of playing wall ball, just throwing it. We threw it too hard, and then it breaks the light of this brand new installed ceiling fan, and so we take off running out of the garage, screaming, "The devil made us do it." At that point, my dad came out, and he kind of looked at us, and he's like, "Okay." He had a friend who ran a wood shop, and so he called and got a paddle made. So like
custom made.
Like a custom made fraternity paddle. And then from then on,
That was it.
we got whooped with a paddle.
Oh,
So it kind of put into, we're like, oh, the tides have turned. We're no longer
We're outmatched.
We're outmatched now. We're no longer going to get the switch or the belt He has went and got a wooden fraternity paddle made, and then he drilled holes in it to make it aerodynamic.
Oh man.
His words. Oh. Yeah. So that's what we got disciplined with growing up.
So you knew, we don't do it. This is just what's happening.
Yeah.
Do you have any sense when you were a kid at that time that you were like, okay, now it's different. I gotta straighten up. Like, did the paddle work?
The paddle worked, absolutely. But I guess it kind of, what I realized about my dad is he typically disciplines you for lying or defying the expectations, meaning just doing whatever you wanted, direct disobedience, as he would call it. If we did something truly horrible, there was often a conversation that would happen. There wouldn't be any like physical discipline. It would be him trying to get to the root and understand our viewpoint. But like little menial stuff like that required in his, like, you know better. The expectation has been set. 8 kids, I'm not going to keep having 8 conversations.
Right. This
is what's expected. Either abide or discipline.
Yeah.
And then things outside of that parameter were dealt with in terms of, I'd say he's not a truly empathetic man, but he will listen to an outlier. So, for instance, once me and my brother were practicing our drive-by because we moved to Bordeaux, and proper preparation prevents poor performance.
Oh.
So John's giving me this look like, what?
I'm listening.
So when you turn 13 in our family, you get a BB gun. So we got our airsoft rifles.
You just go quick through that.
Yeah.
You get a BB, like everybody. I digress.
He's from Texas. I've already established that. The gun culture of Texas. Yeah. You get an airsoft rifle. And so we're like, we're in Bordeaux now. We need to practice our drive-by. So.
Such a logical.
In my brain, yes. We got the riding lawnmower. My mom had just got French doors installed all around the back of the house.
Oh, no.
So we're on the riding lawnmower trying to shoot cans, and we shoot out one of the French doors. And then, once again, we stop, run away. The devil made us do it.
There's a pattern.
And he comes home. He's like, how? Why? What? And I explained to him our logic. Like, we may be in a situation where we have to do a drive-by. And I didn't want that to be my first one.
We
need to keep riding lawnmower running at all times.
Now listen, here's what I like about the logic. Here's a couple things. Now, it's not, okay, if he drives home and you guys have set up protective measures where you're like, we got some things and we're shooting if somebody comes in the yard. No. A drive-by is an aggressive. Yes. It is offense. It's not defense. So it would assume a couple things. Like, you guys get into a beef with another family and you gotta go do something about it.
Yeah.
So it's not, a drive-by is not a retaliate. It's like, you're not
preemptive.
It's preemptive. That's what I wanted. That's what I dig in on.
Yeah.
It's like,
and being proactive.
And you reward proactive people in life. And so that whole story, like, we didn't get whooped after that. It was just, you all have to pay to replace that window. Like, that was
fascinating.
Because he listened, and I'm sure him and my mom, they laugh about that to this day.
Yeah.
Because we were just truthful. We were like, hey,
this is what we're doing.
This was our line of thinking. This is what we were doing.
And I want to give a shout out to your dad right now for this, because I do think that's a very valuable, that's a really fascinating thing to think about, because your kids are going to get to an age, if they hadn't already, where they're going to start thinking for themselves like that, where they're doing this thing where it's like, okay, yes, I did that, but let me tell you why I made that decision. And I do think there's this season that I've talked to about my friends who have older kids, and I've seen in my parents where it's like, okay, I can't just spank you for every bad decision. I need to sort of start entertaining your logic, and because you may actually have sort of a good reason here, and I don't want to squash that.
Right.
I don't want to be
the whole thing.
Yes, I don't want to be like, hey,
yeah.
You don't think for yourself.
Yeah.
Let's go. I'm gonna spank you.
No. And that was absolutely where we learned. Right around that 12, 13-year-old age, when he started to entertain that, like, hey, you all are thinking, making choices for yourself outside of the realm of your mother and I. Let me see what your cognitive processes are. And So growing up from, my dad's not listening, to when we did something massively dumb, for him to listen with, like, truly listen, and then execute
I can't stop thinking
appropriate.
about the drive-by. Just that your little brain. It's like,
What I'm picturing is the riding lawnmower. I mean, how fast can that thing go? So I'm just
That's the
picturing
other
you
thing.
guys, a couple of you, you know, you're 6'1" at the time,
Yeah.
towering on this riding lawnmower
Yep.
with your BB guns.
Yep.
And you shoot, but you're still at the house for another 10 minutes. The riding lawnmower is going so slow.
it's like a parade. It's like a drive-by parade.
The hilarious part of that is we broke the riding lawnmower while doing that.
Oh, your dad.
So yeah,
Oh,
Wait,
man.
but did you? I have to assume. This is the other part that kills me, is that you probably put the bottles in front of the window.
absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. Oh yeah,
God, that is wonderful.
because it just made the most sense in our brain.
Of course.
It made the most sense.
There's got to be scenes. I haven't had one of these quite yet as a parent, but there's got to be scenes that you walk up on, and it's just so far gone. You broke the mower, you shot the window, but you put the bottle in front. That at some point as a parent, you got to think, I actually want to hear. I want to hear how this unfolded.
Please tell me.
I'm as curious as I am angry.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
and we have provided my mom and dad with thousands of those
Yeah.
opportunities.
Yeah. Hey, Dave.
Hey, John.
You know, I was thinking this school year is going to be unlike any other school year.
Oh, I know. Somehow, without money involved, my wife assigned me the roles of both science and PE teacher.
Oh, man, that's a mistake. But it's lucky that we were both turned on to KiwiCo's crates for our kids, right?
No, they've been such a godsend. Both of my kids receive projects that fit their specific age group, and it is awesome.
It is so awesome. I mean, my daughter was working on this arcade crane project. It was amazing. Like, the materials are super high quality, and she's learning engineering while she's building this thing. It's awesome.
Absolutely. Also, that terrifies me. As a dad, it's hard to find things that are truly going to entertain your kids while also being something productive, instead of them picking their nose and trying to see who can hit the window from the farthest away.
Which also involves engineering.
does. That's what
You
I
can't
tell my
take that
wife.
away from them. But luckily, KiwiCo is running a deal with Dadville right now. So if you go to kiwico.com/Dadville, you can get 1 month free on select crates.
KiwiCo is making my new job, quote unquote, as a science teacher, quote unquote, easier while my kids are learning confidence, creativity, and critical thinking skills.
So head to kiwico.com/DADVILLE to join in the fun.
One thing I think is so cool about y'all's story and fascinating is, you know, you grow up in Nashville with parents who are well known in the community. I mean, they're benevolent. They work with kids. You know, your dad and so, what is that like, having parents? You know, growing up in the same city for your whole life, having parents that are so, you know, stuck into that community, so well respected and known. What is that like as a kid growing up?
When I was younger, it was extremely difficult because I've never felt like my dad was my own. Like,
Yeah.
he belonged to the city, wherever we would go.
I don't think we've said. Can you say exactly what your dad started to do?
My dad started a company called Hemswe, which is now pretty much just tackle. And then he sold that, and then he went into ministry full time with a mission called the Family Foundation Fund.
Wait. I didn't know that first part.
Yeah. So my dad came to Nashville because he was working with Southwestern Advantage, and he was one of the first black sales executives for Southwestern Executives.
Yeah, that's
Southwestern Advantage. So that's how they got to Nashville. My mom was a model, New York, like, they were leading a pretty great life. And then came to Nashville, everything was still humming along. And then he got serious about his faith. And what I mean, he had a moment, that's a different podcast, but he had a moment like, yo, I have to walk away from this. I mean, they owned a grocery store, they had a couple rental properties. I mean, they were killing the game.
Yeah.
And he just, I had to walk away from this. And that was really hard for my mom because she's like, I didn't sign up for that. Like, that's not what you sold me when this was still a
Do they
tangential.
have any of y'all yet?
No, they didn't.
Okay, wow.
However, as soon as he decides to do that, walk away, my dad takes in my cousin David and my cousin Oni because his older brother was going through a really hard time. So my mom went from a pretty great independent life to becoming a mother.
How old were they?
David was 8, Oni was 12. So
Like not just kids.
not
but
just
like
kids, but she's in the
mix.
thick of it.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
never had to care for anyone. So that was like their first foray into really living outside of themselves and laying their lives down for someone else.
Damn.
And that's just kind of continued on for 28 years. The Family Foundation Fund's been operating, serving young men who don't have fathers in the Nashville and surrounding communities.
That's incredible.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And to your point, like you said that really well. That would be, I can't imagine the struggle of feeling like your dad is everybody's dad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Not to mention you already got other
siblings.
that,
Yeah. But what we learned in that there was always a certain amount of expectancy from us. Because you're Oni's kids. Like this guy's out here taking care. There used to be 1,000 project buildings in Nashville. They've torn a lot of them down, but we would be in these areas of Nashville and treated with such reverence because my dad was bringing these people groceries. My dad was facilitating pickup and drop off and childcare and just really being an intermediary for people who didn't have access or resources. And he would that's what he's given his life to. Like he just does it instinctively. It was never a thing of, oh, look at me. It was just like,
Pure motive.
yeah, pure, like just, there's a quote by the talented 10th, like the 10% that can should look out for the 90% that can't. And he kind of that's in his soul. And that has been his battle cry since I've been born.
Did you feel like that y'all as kids had to take on responsibility with that, especially you as the oldest boy?
Absolutely. But it also gave me a lot of freedom because I knew that my actions could speak for themselves. Like I never had the opportunity to be concerned with other people's opinions just because like I was responsible for getting me and my brothers and my sister to basketball practice or to soccer practice. And if I did that, great. How I did it didn't matter. I accomplished the task. And so that level of responsibility that I was trusted with at a young age kind of informed how I live my life now.
For sure.
So
Did you resent that at all?
in my college age, yeah. Because I was like, oh man, I didn't realize how much of my childhood I didn't get.
Oh, like looking back.
At
the time, not necessarily.
No, I had a lot of freedom because, like I said, my dad he had started a company, then he was starting a nonprofit, so his time was no longer his own, and he would have to work those long hours. My mom was concerned with the younger kids, so I was gifted a lot of autonomy,
Right.
and I cherish that.
Yeah.
To this day, I cherish my autonomy.
But it had to. But I'm assuming though. But you had to prove. Look, to your point, you had to prove that you were making good decisions.
Oh yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
the minute you misstepped, I'm sure some of that was revoked.
No, well, see, and that's no.
Really?
No, it was actions speak louder than words. And to the point to the window, like my dad would want to know, like, what was your intention here? Like, what did you think the end results would be? Like, yeah, you may have done one night. TSU had just built this outside basketball pavilion, and a lot of the real good hoopers from the city were going to go out there and play. And it was a midnight game. We had literally just finished a basketball game. We got the message, yo, it's going to be a midnight run at TSU. It's going down. So we didn't ask because we knew the answer was going to be
I've just
no.
never been on the other end of one of those. Have you? One of those texts,
Those don't come to me.
quote unquote.
No.
There's a midnight run. We're about to be hooping. I want just once in my life to get that text.
I will get
Will
you
you
that
send that
text.
to me
I will
randomly?
send you that text randomly.
When I have got that text, it's then followed by, would you mind going and getting some waters
Yes.
for the players?
If you could bring some Gatorades.
Bring some towels.
Yeah.
Something
Yeah.
like that. Yeah.
I'll pick you up. I got you. And we'll win.
Yes, you will.
And I won't even need to play.
Can I just hold on? I have to interject this story here. So, we played pickup at the church about it's probably 6 months ago now, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And so Chad Scruggs, our pastor, put this group of guys that go to church to play there. It was a pickup game, real fun. So I'm like, what we should do is Isaac could go to church with us. Like, I should tell Isaac and just see if he wants to come. Chad got wind of that.
Mm-hmm.
Who loves you? But he was like, why did you do that?
And I was changes
like, well,
everything.
because he goes to church and he's a really good basketball player, and I thought it would be fun. And he had a real moment. Like, Chad had a real moment where he was like, okay, this was just a bunch of white guys that were going to play really bad basketball. And Isaac came in. I got so much joy that day watching Isaac play, because it's like watching. It was like someone in third gear who's just like, I'm just going to chill out here. And there'd be a couple of fourth gear moments where it was like, oh my God, look at that. It's so beautiful. But like, you don't understand. When he walked in, everybody was like, Isaac. And they just looked at me. And I was like, what? He plays basketball.
But to add to that, Chad told everyone I was a college soccer player. So he was like, no, he played soccer in
don't need to worry about
college.
it.
We don't need to worry about
Yeah.
it. And I just looked at him and was like, no, I didn't.
No, I
So, yeah.
So y'all went to TSU.
Yeah, we went to TSU. We played, like, one of my brothers played basketball for Lipscomb before he transferred to Southeastern Missouri. I mean, it was just like all of the ballers and like just the hoopers. And it was great. It was phenomenal.
Uh-huh.
We got home. My dad is sitting in the living room like,
Oh, like what, 2?
yeah, probably. Like, he was like, where did you all go? We're like, there was a basketball run, and we decided to, instead of coming home, we went to go do that. And once again, it was one of those moments. He was like, you didn't ask. You didn't tell me and your mom where you went. Like, I've been worried about you. Like, he was like,
So he wakes up, or at some point he realizes,
He just never went to sleep.
Oh, all my kids are gone.
yeah, never went to sleep. Just never went to sleep.
Did y'all all go?
No, it was just me. It was on Isaiah.
Okay.
So,
okay.
and my cousin Nick. Yeah. So
Yeah.
us 4 went, and it wasn't. He went to sleep. He just.
No, well, you don't sleep at night.
No,
When,
like
when
no.
some of your kids are gone.
Just disappear.
Yeah, you don't know what.
Yeah. So we get home, and he's furious. When my dad gets mad, his top lip quivers. Doesn't
It's the tail.
Doesn't raise his voice. Just that lip starts doing the Harlem Shake, and you're like, oh,
Oh, this is serious.
this is serious. Okay.
Harlem
Cool.
Shake.
Cool. Furious. And he was like, guys, like, you all are men now. Like, you're responsible for your time. You're responsible for your actions. Like, if, let's just say, like, it wasn't a basketball thing, and he put some hypotheticals out there. He was like, yeah, I love the fact that you all broke curfew to go play basketball. He was like, obviously, I'm doing something right as a parent. But,
Wow.
but he was like, still, it's the fact that you broke curfew. And we weren't grounded. We just had that long, what would have been a 2 a.m. night turns into a 4 a.m. because we're still talking. And then we had to get up because from the age of 10, my dad has woken us up at 5 a.m. until you graduate high school to go to the downtown YMCA, work out, and put up shots. So we woke up.
What?
Yeah. Like, my dad's terrible at basketball, but his work ethic is unparalleled. So when we were homeschooled, since we didn't have gym class, he would wake us up at 5 a.m.
Wow.
We would go to the downtown YMCA. We would run a mile, play racquetball for a little bit, and then we would just play basketball until probably 10 a.m.
So that was like y'all's gym.
That was our gym.
I mean, I think the Green Berets get up at 5:30.
So,
Like
I
that's
said,
no joke.
whatever is better than the Army. That's what we
amazing.
were.
You were not kidding.
No, and so it
Did
was
was he in the Army?
no,
God, he didn't do
no,
anything. Okay.
just an entrepreneur,
just
self-motivated, self-driven. And so that was one of those. We were like, we are dying.
because you're getting up an hour later.
Like, we are dead, and that was the consequences of our action,
Which is real life.
which is real life.
Yeah.
And my dad is very good about bringing real life to you in a palatable way. So, yeah, we were exhausted. We were dead because we had just played a basketball game. We had just went and played another basketball game. We had just sacrificed our sleep for a learning moment. And now we're back to the next day.
I don't even want to think about how much food your family took in.
Oh.
I don't want to think about that.
God,
You're playing that much. Like, you have got to come in and you just got to, like, you guys got to be wood chippers. You know what I mean? They're just chunking food.
Yeah.
And you're just,
Mom just moving. Just go on. Yeah, so my mom, she has these giant pots till this day. And we're still the gathering. Like, there's now a lot of our friends have moved to the city from various parts of our lives, and our house is just the hangout spot. It is where people go
gather
to just get laughs, get fed, and just kind of experience. Oh, this is what a huge family that's kind of just live their own lives looks like.
So which is interesting. So then you go to college.
Then I go to
you
college.
leave. You leave this nest which has so many, rhythms and lifestyle. All your siblings. It's a huge shared existence.
Yep.
Right. So then you go to college. You go to Covenant.
Yep.
College. Right. We're
Yep.
going to play basketball.
We're going to play basketball.
What was that like?
Ooh, it was
Because that's like spreading. I mean, you'd spread your wings. I mean,
Yeah.
Your dad had given you, but that's like you're really.
Oh yeah, well I'm soaring now.
Yeah.
I'm soaring. So we graduated high school. I went to Lighthouse Christian School in Antioch. So 9th grade through, I'm there. I get to college and I'm used to being in hyper white environments. Like that was just I was born
I like
into it.
hyper white. That's just hyper white.
I was born into them. But when I get to college, there's not a lot of common ground. 'Cause once again, like I'm homeschooled. Then I went to high school for 4 years, and even that was a very small, controlled population. So when I get to college, it's like complete freedom, which I've had a small amount of my whole life. I'm one of the only freshmen with a vehicle, so I'm just on top of the mountain.
Literally
On top of the mountain. I had so much trouble like acclimating to the rigors of college, and you'd think I'd be super prepared for that.
Gotcha.
But I devoted all of my time to just reading and just miscellaneous adventures. Like that's
Miscellaneous
like
adventures.
We'd have 3 a days. I'd wake up, go to the gym, do what I needed to do. I would go to the library, and instead of reading whatever I was supposed to be studying, I would just be reading some random philosophy book or just looking at the oceans of the world. Like I would never do the actual work that I was supposed to do. So I was put on I came in as a red shirt, then I was on academic probation. But I had so many different friend groups because the miscellaneous adventures, like I would go off like, oh, those weird kids over there are LARPing. I have no idea what that is, but they're dressed up funky and they seem to be having a ball.
I want to go do that.
What are you guys doing? And I would follow that rabbit. And they're like, well, you're an athlete, so blah, 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 blah. But those stereotypes didn't really hold a lot of water for me because I've always kind of just lived outside the margins of normality. So I had a huge group of friends at Covenant, and I had ran in a lot of weird different little pockets, but I could always go back to the comfortability of the athlete status. But then I met my wife. Well, at that time, she was not my wife, but
It was arranged marriage.
and it would be some time before she became my wife.
Due to these miscellaneous
Due to
adventures.
these miscellaneous adventures. And that kind, I was like, oh, okay. Like she is serious, a brilliant, directed focus, and she was like, "You are a squiggly straw." I'm not about that.
Great example.
Squiggly straw.
Squiggly straw. And so much so that eventually I was expelled from Covenant.
right.
Yeah, because I was so good at being a squiggly straw in
In a straight straw environment.
at a straight straw environment.
The plot thickens. Okay.
So I got kicked out of school, and then I just started working.
You stayed in Chattanooga.
I stayed in Chattanooga. And that even when I was getting kicked out, like I was sitting in the dean's office, and the dean was like, "Well, we got to call your dad," and I was like, "Cool, let's do that." And so I pulled out my cell phone and I'm like dialing, and my dad picks up like, "Hey, how you doing, son?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm doing pretty good. How about yourself?" Brief chat, like the dean is listening to this whole. And I was like, "Hey, real quick,
Real quick.
I'm getting expelled from university." And he was like, "Oh, what you do?" I said, "I threw a really, really, really good party." And he's like, "Oh, okay." And I said, "And the dean's listening on speaker, by the way. He needs to talk to you." And like the dean's face is just like, "That's how you break this news."
Wait, what?
Like, that's how you, okay. And he's like, "Yeah, we're having to let your son go. He violated the student contract of the university. Um, my dad's like, well, my son knows that actions have consequences. What do you need from me? And he's like, oh, we just needed to tell you that your son wasn't enrolled here anymore. And he's like, okay, yeah, great.
So what year were you expelled?
I was expelled 2007. So
And that was your
that would have
sophomore
been
year?
my junior year.
Junior year.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that, and I was like, okay. He's like, I'll see you when you get home. I was like, all right. Click. And then Dean is just sitting over there with the face you have on right now.
Like, what?
Like, that's it? Like, no yelling, no cursing, no, how could you? I was like, nah, like, me and my dad been doing this for some years now.
Yeah.
Like, this is old hat to us.
Oh you
and-
ever heard of a lawnmower drive-by?
And so I started working. Like, I came home that summer. I went and sold books with Southwestern Advantage, and
Which I bet you crushed that job.
I had a blast.
So just to pause, did y'all ever have like a secondary conversation you and your dad about that?
Nope.
Dang.
No.
So how did you feel about it though? Were you bummed about not being enrolled, not finishing college, or did you care?
Honestly, I didn't care because I went from it. So my collegiate basketball story, I actually never set foot in a game because red shirt,
Yep.
academic probation, broke my femur. So
Broke your femur.
broke my femur.
Which is such a everybody knows that trajectory.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
the trajectory
yeah.
of greatness.
Next is he's probably going to break his femur.
Trajectory of greatness.
Yeah. So once I broke my femur, like it was a wrap. There was no basketball after that.
Yeah.
So I was just at college and I didn't have that safe haven of basketball anymore. So I had all these eclectic friend groups and theater kids and the art kids, and my roommate was a biology major, a brilliant brain. And so I had all of these people in my life that I was just like, oh, I get to really like kind of press in and see what life as a normal student looks like.
Yeah. Did you
Minus-
feel like it was like, okay, I don't have to be the athlete anymore. I can do whatever I want.
I didn't realize how much my identity was caught up in being a basketball player. But when it was removed, I was like, huh. It wasn't even like, oh, what am I going to do?
Right.
It was just like, I get to go hang out with people now. Like, I forgot. I completely, like I said, the school part was never my strong suit, and it never was. But the people, I really got to go and kind of just and be a part of the student body and go to dances, go to things you kind of just miss when you're an athlete. And it was phenomenal, so much so.
Is that when you got into acting?
Yes. That's when I also got kicked out of college. But yeah, that's when I got into acting. I was just like, yo, like there's so much more to this college experience than being in the gym and being in the library. And I kind of just got to explore a little bit more. And I told Rebecca, my wife, I was like, I'm going to be an actor. And she was like, you just get your degree. You just make sure you finish and get your degree. And then a couple days later, she came back and said, all right, I believe you. And that kind of started the path towards acting.
When did y'all get married?
We got married in 2010.
Okay. So were y'all still in Chattanooga?
Yeah, we were still in Chattanooga.
And then y'all moved to California.
Then we moved out. We moved to California 2015.
Oh,
So
okay. Okay.
we were in Chattanooga she finished school in 2009. So we were in Chattanooga 5 years after she finished.
Okay.
So I got a job. I worked at Covenant Transport in the call center, like doing logistics for a trucking company. Then I started waiting tables at Mellow Mushroom. I became a bartender, and I kind of just started really grinding. I would work as many jobs as I could, and that's what I learned from my father. Like my dad would just, no matter what, he was like, if you work hard enough at something, it'll work out.
Yeah.
And so I would just save my money, and I was like, yo, I would look into, acting classes here, and so I just started kind of doing like local regional commercials. And eventually a gentleman named Stevie Ray Dallimore moved from New York, and he was doing community service for an after-school theater program at the downtown library, and I said, "Hey, I want to be an actor. What does that take?" And he said, "It's a hard life." And I kind of shared my story with him. He was like, "Oh, well, I think you may be cut out for this." um, and so he really became my mentor and kind of took me under his wing. And I started volunteering with the Music Fire Project, teaching kids how to write plays and kind of just learning what the theater entails. And that opened a lot of doors for me in terms of getting into the world of acting at a sustainable
Yeah.
way. So
That's really cool. It's like your entrance into acting was sort of modeled after kind of what you saw your dad do
Yeah.
your whole life.
yeah. And then the button on Chattanooga was right when we were about to leave. I think I had 17 credit hours that I had to finish. So my wife was actually coaching at Covenant. She was coaching there. She was the assistant coach on the women's cross country team. And like I was like, "Yo, I got to get this degree. Like I'm this close." And they were like, "Yes." And it was one of the kids that I had befriended from one of those like little weird LARPing. Him and a guy named Rodney Miller were running admissions, and they were like, "Yes, you can come back. You will finish, and you'll get this degree. We're not going through anybody else. I'm going to go to the dean." And they enrolled me right there, and I actually got my degree from Covenant College.
What'd you get it in?
Sociology.
Oh, nice.
Oh, cool.
So more people stuff.
More,
Yeah.
quote unquote sociology. More people stuff.
So, and
So when do y'all start having kids?
ooh, we have Cinco, who's my firstborn son, in 2012.
It's a great name.
So, thank you.
That's the
Cinco.
and it fits him somehow magically.
Like we were like, okay, let's do us, because our dating life was rocky. She dumped me a couple times before I finally got that forever.
Yeah.
Before that straw got straight.
Before that's true.
What was that term again? Squishy straw?
A squiggly straw.
Squiggly straw.
Yeah, it
I'm
took
new
some
to
time.
that term.
I just know that now, whenever you and I are talking, you explain somebody that way, I'm going to know exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
He's cool, but he's kind of a squiggly straw.
He's
Okay.
kind of a
Squiggly.
squiggly
He's still a little squiggly.
Squiggly.
At the end.
At the end.
Right at the end. It's working itself out.
So I finally straightened up a little bit, and she was like, "Yeah, I can actually." My best friend got married to a girl he had been dating for 3 months. He popped the question,
Dang.
and I just looked at him and I was like, "Why? Like, you're gonna blow this all up." And literally, she looked at me and was like, "You're on the clock now, kid."
Yep.
And so, 1 year from when they got married, we got married, and then we kind of just started like really. Her family's hyper conservative, mine not at all, and so we just started kind of braiding our lives together into what is our beautiful, beautiful union.
So in Cinco, you said was 2012.
Yeah, 2011. He's gonna be 9 this year. Good God.
Yeah, that's right.
2011. Yeah,
And so y'all have
3.
3, but by the time y'all moved to Santa Barbara, 2?
Yeah, we had 2. Alexa was just born when
That's
we moved
right.
to Santa Barbara.
That's right.
And so she grew up in a very comfortable life. And then we come back to Nashville, once again, like a reset, because kid number 3, and cost of living in Santa Barbara for a struggling actor is exorbitant. It's exorbitant for anyone.
Yeah.
But for a struggling actor, it's heavy with 2, 3, just non-doable.
Was that kind of the impetus to move back?
Yeah, very much so. It was just, and I think the end of my straw was still a little bit squiggly. and God saw, he was like, "Oh, if I let all this kind of happen right now, you are going to revert back to your squiggly self." So I got to kind of hit the reset button. And it was hard. It was a very hard pill to swallow. I mean, I was getting some of the best as an actor, your job is to audition. Like if you get the role, like that's a bonus. Mm-hmm. I was getting just great auditions. I was having to fly back to Atlanta for like some bigger auditions, and I was like, "Oh, this thing is happening! Like it is. We out here, boo. We finna get this. Like Hope Ranch, here we come. Like it was all
let's
let's get it." And then God just hit the reset button real hard. He was like, still a little squiggly, kid. Back to 1.
Hit the squiggly button.
Yeah, back to 1. And it, for her, I think for Rebecca, it was almost a bit of a blessing in terms of, because as if you couldn't tell, like I'm not a wild card, but I feel very comfortable coloring outside the margins. Like that's not, I've done it my whole life, so it's not a foreign concept to me.
Yeah.
And then she was like, "Oh, yeah, I think a little bit more structure,
Yeah,
a little bit of
your
a
family's
little bit
here.
more stability, a little bit more accountability would serve us well in terms of where you're headed." And it has. And that's a tough pill to swallow. Like, girl, you got all this. You get to go to the country club. What you need?
To the ocean.
And so being back in Nashville and having our third kid here was very grounding. And it was humbling because, I mean, you feel like, oh, I'm about to be at the top of this thing. Like, I got to meet Will Smith. I'm just dropping that in there just casually.
Would you tell that story?
If I had a
think
Will
this is-
Smith story, I would have already told it. So,
Yeah, John
kudos to
John
you
will
for waiting
lead.
this long.
John will start a podcast with name drops. So
Yeah.
It was one of those. I met this beautifully eccentric old Jewish lady, and we just kind of became buddy. Turns out she was one of the old heads that got in with Steve Jobs back in the day at Apple.
dang.
And so she was just hyper connected, and I met her through improv. And so it was her. She was a member of something called the Santa Barbara Film Society, which is like a whole bunch of Hollywood people, and they get
That
to
live
watch,
in- yeah.
that live in Santa Barbara. They get to watch movies before they came out. And so Will Smith was coming to do a Q&A about Concussion before it released, and he came with Dr. Ebby. I forget the guy's name, the actual doctor.
Oh, yeah. Who he was playing in
Who
the
he was
movie.
playing in
Yeah.
the movie, and they both came. And so it was a lady named Berta. I mean, she's just a fabulous New Yorker, and Sue and myself, and they were like, "Yo, we know this is Will Smith's going to be here. Like, we've seen you perform. We know that you really like him. I haven't talked to you. Do you want to come do this thing?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" They're like, "Come, like, meet Will Smith." And I was like, "Yeah, absolutely." And like, I didn't know how this thing worked. You're not really supposed to bring guests to this thing. It's reserved seating. But the way Sue and Berta kind of live their life, and that's why we became fast friends, they color outside the margins too. So we kind of just walk into this thing. And it's one of those situations where you CTBP, count the black people. And
hold on.
That's,
CTBP.
yeah,
Count
CTBP.
the black people.
Yeah. So
Can you speak to that for all the rest of us white people? Explain.
sometimes you walk into a situation and you're just like, oh, something may go down. And
At any
so,
point.
At any point. And so you want to just look for an ally or someone to have your back in case things go left.
This is real.
This is real. This is absolutely.
I'm laughing, but this is
an absolutely real
yeah,
thing.
this is real.
And this was one of those situations.
Yeah, because it's like a white people theater.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And it's not even like a real theater. It's like a gated little. It's a thing. It's a thing. So we pull in. There's like one black guy valet parking, and just I was like, okay, cool, got one, great. So like we're walking in, and it's like there's like a who's who here to see this movie, and I'm just like, literally like, and they're like asking for tickets, and Sue just kind of walks in, Berta just walks in, and so I just walk in.
Yep.
They don't say anything. I was like, great, good, but I can kind of like I've never been here before, and they're just. The looks are like, who are you? Like that kind of look.
Yep, yeah.
And they just keep walking into the theater. So I just keep following them. We sit like 3 rows from the front. Like there's everybody else is back there. And then we get like the good seats. Watch the film. Everything's kind of wrapping. And then Bird is like, we don't actually have the VIP experience thing. He's going to come out and answer some questions. So he comes out and answers some questions. And then I see him kind of like doing the scan, just like checking the room, CTBP. And then like we lock eyes and he gives me that charismatic Will Smith smile, like, what's up, nod? Like, oh, I see you. You made it in the room. What's up? What's up, bro?
Instant connection.
Yeah, instant connection. And I'm like, yo, Will Smith sees me. Cool, we in this thing.
Yeah.
Q&A wraps up. The doctor, I forget his name, he leaves. And so there's a huge line that's been forming at the end of the Q&A to the right of the theater. And these are all people that are wanting, and they're roping off velvet rope, the red carpet's right here, and all these people are going to wait to meet Will Smith. And it's going out into the lobby. And I was like, there's no way I'm getting in that line. So I just do and then he gives me the thing back. And so like I'm letting these 2 other ladies out of our row. And then as I'm letting them out, Will Smith steps over the velvety rope and starts walking towards me. And like people are like trying to like get close to him, and he's kind of like, no, I don't want to talk to you.
He's parting the water.
Just like, and then everybody's kind of like just standing still, like, oh, what is he gonna do? And then like he starts walking towards me, and I realized, and I was like, oh, I'm about to meet Will Smith. And then my brain betrays me. My brain's like, in West Philadelphia, and I was like, no, brain,
Don't do it.
don't do that.
Don't you do
Don't
that.
you do that. Do not do that. Do not do that. And then he's like getting closer. He's like, born and raised. And I was like, no. And
On the playground.
and so I'm literally like, I'm having this internal like fight with myself. And I can see like a look of concern kind of register on his face. And he's like, the first thing he says to me is, you good? Like,
No, because he can see
he
you.
can see my wheels turning. And to this day, I have no idea what I said to him, but he balls over laughing, like that deep baritone laugh, and he is dying. And then we kind of just chop it up for like maybe a minute and a half, and like people like snapping photos because obviously they think like I'm his guy, like I'm one of his people. And then his people come say, hey, yo, all of these people are actually waiting to meet you. Like, you got to get you back in the rope. And then he's like, all right, I'll see you around. I was like, yes, you will. And then he goes, and Sue, the old Jewish lady, was like, you made Will Smith laugh.
Like, I'm sleeping good tonight.
And like he goes back. And then when I'm like riding on a cloud,
Oh, yeah.
like heading out of the theater. And then Sue was like, but you didn't get a picture. And I'm just like, I don't care, Sue. Like it's this. I met him. Like that's all that matters. And that's how I met Will Smith.
That's amazing.
That is amazing.
So, but the scan is just a part of your life.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
All the time.
And like what's happening right now in our culture, like you can see why that is a necessary thing. Like, because you can be in a grocery store, you can be at a ball game. Like you just take a scan of your surroundings and you want to see if there are any other people like you in that place. And oftentimes I find myself in rooms and places where there are not a lot of other pieces like me. However, there are a lot of voices like myself. And so that takes a certain level of intentionality and listening and not just being so judgmental, which is a hard thing. Because growing up, it was a survival instinct. Like, are there other black people at this thing? And that's a question that aunts and uncles would ask. Like, oh, you're going to the lake? Or any other black kids are going to the lake?
They would ask you that.
Yeah. Like, because, I mean, it's a cultural, I mean, they're not that far removed from the race riots of the 60s. So they're like, if you're at the lake, something could go down. And do you have someone that will support your side of the story? Because my dad and my mom, they don't have this hold up or blockage in them, because being a nonprofit, a lot of the people that have underwritten and supported the Family Foundation Fund for 28 years have been the super conservative Belle Meade, Franklin, uber wealthy people of Nashville, and they have deep, beautiful friendships with my dad, but those friendships came through real hard conversations and oftentimes some uncomfortable teaching moments.
Wow, for real.
Like
your dad has to stop him and be like, hey.
Yeah, and they know my dad is, if he's willing to leave corporate America and come and clean houses, they know that his ego is not in the things that he says. Like his ego is not a part of who he is. Like, and I aspire to be that humble and to walk that purely, but it's still a little squiggle. Thankfully, they were influenced by those moments, and so they raised us very intentional about, you still got to check your surroundings, you still have to be aware, but you love the heart, because everybody bleeds the same, and if you have a heart after God, you have a heart after God. And it's a Saul to Paul situation sometimes, but you won't know that unless you're willing to get in the trenches with somebody and really walk in love and grow with them. And so what I found in my personal, my wife is white, or white passing. We don't know what she is actually.
White passing. Passable.
Those relationships transcend cultural boundaries if you're willing to have tough conversations. And so regardless of the rooms I found myself in, yeah, I do the scan, but I oftentimes like, okay, that's reactionary. Let's
like biologically.
Yeah, that's biologically ingrained, but let's see if this is a room of like-minded people and then form an opinion from there.
Man, Dave, my body is burning right now.
John, I've said that about your body since I've known you.
Thank you so much.
glad
But
you're
it's
paying
burning because of this full body workout that I'm doing with my new cross rope.
Oh, dude, I have a 1-pack now. Have you seen it?
Yeah, you keep showing it to me.
I know.
I tell you what, cross rope is so much more of an interesting workout than running or lifting weights. I mean, I just adjust the ropes and the handles, and bam, I have a more intense workout, and I can make it easier for when I'm lazy.
Yeah, it was so easy to get started. I got the ropes, download the app, and I was ready for one of the better workouts I've ever done, and I can do it at home.
Mm-hmm. And here's a better thing. Crossrope is offering $40 off for Dadville dads. Just visit crossrope.com/Dadville.
And that can be moms, too. Listen, okay? John, you forgot to mention they'll also get free shipping through that link.
Free shipping.
I said it.
So true. So just head to crossrope.com/Dadville to get yours today.
A few years ago, this is random tangent, but seeing Black Panther, the movie, which is such a great movie, there were these great articles written around that movie from black writers about why that movie resonated. And it messed me up in the best way, because it was this renaissance, and you were there for it, but it was this renaissance in me, I think, for the first time, having a little bit of like a peek behind the curtain on what my black friends dealt with on a subliminal level. I had no idea.
Yeah.
Like the obvious stuff is like, oh yeah, okay, whatever. I see how that would happen. But I remember you and I having that conversation about Will Smith, and we were talking to a dear friend of mine, David Ryan Harris, and David saying, who's a black guy, and him saying, oh yeah, I mean, every room I walk in. And I was like, wait. So both you and he's like, yeah, it's just you. Every room I walk in, I do like the, you said.
CTBP.
There you go. And he's like, and it's not, he's like, you just do it. Because you're like, okay, if something goes down, and I love what you just said, because this is fascinating to me, but like, do I have someone to corroborate my claims should this something happen, anything happen? And I think that's one of the things that, like, I just think if for those white people listening, that is just the tip of the iceberg. Because I think the beautiful things that are happening in America right now with the conversations we're having are just incredible. But I think, the hardest thing as a white person to understand is just even the smallest tip of the iceberg of experiences that our black brothers and sisters have on a minute-to-minute, hour-to-hour basis. Because there's one thing to be like, oh, well, this, but it's like, no. Just imagine just this one thing, that every room you ever walk in, let's just start there.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. And I think that, I remember both having that conversation with a few of my black friends, and it just blew, I was like, God, just even that's a thing.
Yeah.
That's not even the hard, like the really scary stuff. That's just life.
And I'd have to imagine that it would take a lot of patience on your part to let us collectively, us white people, in 2020. I mean, I'm having these realizations. One of my best friends since 5th grade is Korean American. I've lived with him. I know this guy, and we just a couple weeks ago had a conversation very similar to this, and he was like, "Yeah, it's a part of every group that I enter, there's some kind of scan," his version of that.
Yeah.
And I would imagine it has to be frustrating at times, to see the sort of awakening and the posting that's going on, the awareness that's starting to happen. And on your end, you're like, yeah, nothing is new here.
Yeah.
And also, and I'm curious how you feel with relation to what your dad did and his experience. Do you feel like it is your, I don't know if responsibility is the right word, but to teach us this? Because I've heard some people mean, saying like Killer Mike was on ESPN the other day saying like, it's not my responsibility to teach you guys this. Like, you need to educate yourselves, which I totally get that. How do you feel about that?
I support what Killer Mike said, but on the inverse of that, like if you have a hard question, you have to know that there's a safe space to come and ask. So we have to be willing to answer those hard questions and make reading recommendations or offer source material after you've done the initial work. But you can't just say, yo, teach me. Like, no, that
I got a job.
Yeah, like I got kids, man. You gotta go.
I'm trying to teach my kids.
Yeah. You got to go do some of the heavy lifting, and then you can come back, and then we can have some hard conversations, and we can explore some of these truths and some of the lies that have been purported by our culture. And that, I feel, is Black America's role right now. Because there's people infinitely better read, more articulate, and studied that have really processed this for generations in the height of Jim Crow and in the revolt and turmoil of the 60s that were living in super more tough times. And now we find ourselves here. You can go get a glimpse and a feel and a canological kind of, I'm going to say, the theology of Black America during the height of racism, and then come fast forward to 2020, and then come with your questions, come with your plans of action. So let us say, oh, that won't work, or yeah, that's a great idea. How are you going to make it sustainable?
One of my favorite conversations that I've been a part of in the last forever was on the Christmas tour, because you came out and read the story, which was the best.
Thank you.
Every night you and I would laugh on the recap. You would come in and be like, okay, I learned something new tonight. And I was always like, all right, let's hear it. But one of the things that I got so much joy from, and I feel like I learned so much from, was the night that you and Jason, Eskridge, who sings BGV, is one of the best singers in Nashville, also another Black guy, who's always on the tour with us. I walked into a conversation where y'all were talking with another guy in the band about Trump and about this stuff, and I was so affected by so much of what y'all had said, and especially the conversation came up about, because somebody else, it's everybody else in the band is white. Somebody was saying, like, what do you do in these moments where you're with your kid and you're in Target? Because I think this had just happened, and their 4-year-old is like, sees, I think, somebody with dreads, or had his afro picked out or something, and they said, "Mama, that guy's hair is really cool. How does he do that?" And the mom's like, "No, dude, don't come, we don't want to bother him, and that's a racist question or something, And I was so moved by both of y'all saying, no. Like, that's the conversation.
That's the teachable moment. Like, that's the conversation. Like, that's when little Freddie comes over and is like, yo, your hair's so cool. Then we get to be a positive moment in his life. And he's like, no, like, I met a Black guy at Target the other day and he was dope. Like, we got to talk about hair. He told me about cocoa butter. Like, that moment, as opposed to the fear instinct, like, don't bother him. Don't. Then it becomes, oh, don't bother the Black person. Well,
wow.
Right. And we were talking about snakes before this, like, handling that stimuli, like how are you gonna present this piece of information to your kid, because it's gonna affect and inform future interactions. When they ask just a beautiful question from a very innocent mind, that's when all parties have to slow down, put everything else aside, and just engage the little guy for what that moment is.
Because I feel like, for me, it's that space between that's so intimidating of me, and I'm thankful for my friends like you that we can talk. I mean, I'm so thankful for that. We can talk about that. But it does feel, for, I think a lot of white people have really great intentions. There's this lake of mystery that's like between us, where you're like, I wonder if my friends feel that. I wonder if my friends struggle. But you don't want to, one, I think it's humiliating, it's humbling, because you don't want to be like, I don't know something. But two, you also don't want to be taken, you don't want to come off as asking something that's insensitive. Yeah, so there's this really intimidating space but I love when you guys said that was such I just felt so invigorated, like, oh no, okay, good. This is not, and you want to be careful.
Yeah, I mean, grain of salt. Yeah, be careful. But those, I think, the lake of sensitivity, like, that's, everybody's on that lake. Everybody. It's just whether you're willing to row out a little bit further, you want to stay close to shore.
Right.
Where that's the stuff you know the ground.
Right.
That's uncharted waters out
Right.
there. And I feel like there's a lot of people on both sides of that lake. And if you just kind of meet in the middle, the waters are infinitely deeper and cooler, and there's more to be experienced, but you got to kind of paddle out there.
So what is it like with you and Rebecca, because you got both races, you got the power couple.
Oh, yeah.
So
Well,
like with kids, how do you talk,
Well, this is what we tell our kids. We say, you have white privilege and black power. Do with it as you see fit.
Oh, yeah.
That's what we tell them. Like,
That's amazing.
and that has, I mean, if you meet my son Cinco, he's the most confident 8-year-old.
Oh my God.
A lot of it is unearned confidence. I will.
It doesn't matter.
That's the best
It
kind.
doesn't matter.
That's my favorite kind.
Oh man.
Used rightly, that's a very powerful weapon.
Oh, and it oozes. It oozes from him. But
I
that's
wonder where
kind
he
of.
gets that.
Me too. I told you.
We haven't
Rebecca.
figured it out yet.
That is how we, because it's letting them know, yo, you come from two very different, very unique, equally important cultures.
Yeah.
And people are going to try to make you pick a side.
Right.
And that's unfair to you as a human. And they're typically doing that because they're uncomfortable with who you are.
Yes.
They don't know how to identify you.
Yeah.
And to the point, my son Cinco, we were in Montreat, and he walked up to Rebecca's mother, who was beautiful. Like, she's aged very gracefully. I look forward to my future with my wife. And he said, Mama Sue, black people don't get old, but you're aging pretty good.
Oh,
And that's a lot to unpack.
I'm going to get that quilted.
Yeah, there's a lot there.
That's a lot to unpack.
And she came back to me. She just squeezed my arm. She said, you told your son black people don't age? I said, oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's one of the benefits.
Yeah. Like, there's a lot of baggage, but we're going to claim those benefits. And like for her, like she was just like laughing because she like just took it as a complete compliment. And our marriage has presented us an opportunity to have a lot of tough conversations with a lot of people.
Wow.
But
Yeah.
then we get to kind of go deconstruct those moments for ourselves and see how we want to present these future questions and problems that our kids are going to face. I mean, because every kid goes through a maturation process that's difficult. And every kid has their own thing, but we didn't want who they are or their ethnicity to be one of those things they have to work through.
Yeah.
Right.
So is it tough parenting the two of you? You say she came from a pretty structured, conservative upbringing.
Yes.
You came from possibly the opposite of that.
Yes.
Homeschool. You're not like on a schedule, getting the bus at 7 a.m.
Yes.
So what is that like, bringing the two of those to your kids?
Can I just say it's fun to watch from the sidelines continue? I enjoy watching it.
We've actually kind of taken inverse roles. So I'm a very disciplined, very structured, because I know actions have consequences. Like that has,
Right.
if I had a tattoo, it would be across my back. Actions have consequences. Like,
And then
so,
an icon of a lawnmower with a kid with a BB gun.
with a cup of lemonade and a squiggly straw. And so I am the more strict parent.
That's so funny.
Whereas she is very laissez-faire. It's just like she's Bohemian Rhapsody embodied. Like, you just go wild, kids. Like, my son had his backpack on when I was literally leaving the house. He had his backpack, his slingshot, and his bike, and he was just like pedaling away. Like, and I was like, where he's going? She was like, I don't know. And I'm like, you got one job. That's part
We'll
of
see
the
how this
job.
plays out.
Yeah, like that's how she was. She was like, and I'm like, okay, cool, great. We'll deal with this when I come home.
That's interesting.
But that same level of confidence that I got from my parents being like, you know what to do.
Wow.
Yeah.
I see that playing out in my kids 1,000 times over.
Yeah.
And while I'm relegated to the role of disciplinarian, which is not my favorite role, it is absolutely necessary when you have three beautiful, precocious little people walking around with the amount of confidence that they have.
So you just kind of spoke this, but what has surprised you about the fathering part of your life? Like, because you kind of said that just then, but like, what is it you being like, oh, I didn't know I'd feel like that, or I'd feel like this?
Like I never saw myself as a disciplinarian. Like, so having to put that hat on was alarming to me, because I'm used, like growing up, like I was used to receiving consequences or accolades, depending.
Sometimes both.
Sometimes both. And now it's very in the reality of, oh, you have to. This thing only works if everybody's doing their part. So you kind of got to be the one that's structured and responsible and moving.
Corralling.
Yeah, and that's not necessarily ever been a hat I thought I would wear.
Yeah.
So that's kind of been.
Do you feel like that's been a response to Rebecca?
Yes.
Huh.
Yeah.
Just seeing that she kind of was like, this is my vibe.
Yes. And I think that I was attracted to that. Like I still am. Like, she is go with the flow, and God knows, like, that has saved us, because she's like, it doesn't matter. Like, yeah, you're gonna go to LA and sleep in your car while you go to work the comedy strip. Like, great. I'll be here at Santa Barbara. You know where to find me.
Yeah, man.
Like, most wives wouldn't be okay with that. And she's always just been like, yeah, no, do it. It'll work out. Great.
Yep.
And I think that's a reaction from her upbringing, whereas mine is a reaction to my upbringing. And we're kind of just that yin and yang of parenting, and it's worked really well for the 10 years we've been married.
Yeah. I just feel, I know Amy's like that. Annie's the same way. When you do what we do, when you are in the entertainment world, there is maybe no better gift than a wife who's like, cool.
It's a
we'll figure
requirement.
It out. I mean, it is like, I could get emotional.
I wish I had more of it.
Golly. Yeah, I don't have it as much as Annie does.
Yeah.
I mean, I can tell you, I don't know if you felt this way, Isaac, but I have numerous Ebenezer conversations in my marriage where, like, I remember the walks. I remember where we were. And I was like, I don't think I want to do this anymore. And she's like, shut up.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it's too hard. I'm gone too much. She's like, Dave, stop. This is what you love doing this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay.
And that's, if I didn't have that support, if I didn't have that person, like, I don't think I would have had the successes that I've had thus far.
Yeah.
Because if I have to be out at till 2 a.m., 3 a.m., I'm gone for a week. There's no, I'll come home and I'm exhausted. Like, I miss my kids. Like, and she's like, yeah, okay, cool, great. You missed the kids.
Mow the lawn.
Yeah, you got stuff to do. Like, I'm like, but did you miss me? She's like, no, not really. Like, but that level of freedom and, like, just straight up trust is what's kind of, I'm having to be the discipline, like the structure of this boat, but she is 1,000% the motor of this thing.
Yeah.
So,
well, and I think this is, I was going to say this as I was thinking about getting together. You, of all of my friends, and it makes, like, hearing you talk about your upbringing, which I knew a lot about, but hearing the nuances of it, it really informs this question a little more. But I think of all of my friends that are dads, you, of all of them, have these really fascinating consistencies in your parenting. Like, I always love hearing you talk about, like, things that you're like, oh, that's what we do. Or I say this to the kids. I have them memorize this. They're these sort of, like, things that you instill that I'm always so fascinated by, which it sounds like your dad, obviously, and your mom, you know, they both did those things. But can you speak to that? Like, what that comes from, the intention of that?
absolutely. Thank you for saying that, by the way.
Yeah.
Wow, great.
Yeah.
Wow, great compliment. Once again, they're biracial children, so they're going to grow up in a world that wants to put a narrative on them. So first and foremost, they have to know who they are. And so I make my kids, they have mantras that they've memorized, and they speak to themselves. They say them before they go to bed, or if they're going through something. One is like, I am brave. I am not afraid. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Like, those just like little moments of difficulty. They know that there is something that their parents have sat down with them and said 1,001 times, and breathing words of life into them. And that comes from the difficulties that I faced in my life. Like, growing up, I would be on Dickerson Road selling lemonade, because that was what me and my friends would do. So we had a lemonade stand, and we got robbed. We had to fight, but we would also, if we did it well, we'd make $200 in a day selling lemonade on Dickerson Road. Most kids, they didn't do that. So that that the intentionality of your effort has been imprinted on my brain. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, you're gonna struggle, you're gonna go through some things, but if you maintain that God has your back and your faith is active, this too shall pass.
Yeah.
And so that's really where a lot of my parenting strategies, as far off as they may be, like they come from, I think, a life well lived and informed through struggle and heartache and success. But I know that you can't really have one without the other. And God's plans are infinitely better than ours. So we just have to be confident in the tools and the things that He has given us for His glory. And so that kind of informs my parenting style.
So how do your kids react to the little mantras? Like when you're like, "Hey, Cinco, say your thing," is he like, "Dad, no," you know?
No, okay, so another little tangent story. We were in Santa Rosa and he bruised his heel bone jumping off a waterfall. Then he had a soccer tournament a couple months later and he re-injured his heel. And he was bummed. Like, the kid loves soccer. He had to play his first game, got hurt in his first game, set out for the next 3 games. They were in the championship game. The game was on the line. Like, he asked the coach if he could go in. He's like, "Can I go in?" And the coach was like, "He's hurt." And then she looked at me, and he looked at me and he said, "I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me." And I was like,
What are you gonna say?
and I sent you the video.
Put the kid in.
Yeah,
after
you
that.
put the kid in.
When he says that, you put him
put
in.
the kid in. There was 1.7 seconds left. His team was down 1-0. His teammate kicks the ball in. It ricochets off a defender's chest. And my son, he's left-footed. With his right foot, he rips an upper 90 from about 30 yards out as the clock is expiring and they tie, effectively winning the tournament.
No way.
And so, he doesn't get that moment if I let fear dictate
right.
my parental instincts. Like, no, you're hurt. Let's not. But for me to tell him this and for him to actually believe it enough to want to get out there for the betterment of his team and then to come in and have a clutch moment like that.
Yeah.
It's that much more real to him now. And so
that's amazing.
That is I've had lots of little moments like that with my
Yeah.
kids when they're like, "I'm not afraid," or "I can do all things," or "I am beautiful."
Yeah.
When they say those things and then they carry out some minute action, for them it's words becoming life.
Yeah.
And so that's what you hope for. And I haven't had them spit it back or be exhausted by it yet. But he's 8, about to be 9, so give it some time. Probably.
Well, I think it's just good for me to hear that. You have the success story on the soccer field, and he says his mantra, and he goes in, and couldn't have gone better.
Yeah.
But to know that the road to get there is probably 100 times of him saying it, and maybe you feel like he's not really getting it or whatever. Just the day-to-day grind of it.
Absolutely.
You got to remind yourself that it's getting in there.
Yeah.
It's working.
I think too that those moments are always so challenging when it comes back to you.
Yeah.
And then you are accountable for what you're trying to teach your kid.
Oh, right,
Yes.
right.
You know,
it
you're
was as
sitting
much
there,
on the line for you as
Exactly.
it was for him.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
My mom tells the story all the time, but when I was in college and I was just really starting to do the music thing, and of course she and Dad have no pedigree for this. There's no rule book on how this is supposed to unfold. And apparently, she tells the story all the time, but I was washing the car, and I've told her this weekend, I've come home like, "Hey, I think I'm going to do the music thing. I'm going to be a singer-songwriter." I'd sung for 2 years at this point. And it was not great. I don't know that it is now, but she, she's like mom. So she's in there kind of I gotta say, I just don't know if this is the right call. I know David loves music and he loves playing the drums, but God, to make a living. So apparently she kind of comes out of the car and she's like, "Honey, I'm so excited about you wanting to do music, but Dave, I just think this is it's a hard road, and you haven't really done it that long." And apparently I looked at her and I said, "Well, Mom, this is the key part." I said, "You and Dad always tell me to delight yourself in the Lord, and He'll give you desires of your heart." And she said, literally, I stood there when you said that, and I was like, we did say that, didn't we? And I just kept watching the car, and she was like, yeah. And she said she just kind of went, okay, and walked back inside and was like, "Well, Lord, you have won again." But those moments where as a parent, you sort of realize oh gosh, this is now me. Like
what have we done?
I got to practice what I'm preaching
Yeah.
here.
And that is the most exhausting part of being a parent, probably. My daughters love to say, well, you're a man of your word. And they say it in a weaponized way when they want something. It's never what I've done or accomplished something.
You're giving them tools, but they're getting weapons.
Yes, exactly. They're upgrading. This is like video games.
You've given them a stick, they've turned it into like a machete somehow.
And so I'm like, I don't think you're getting this quite how I want you to.
Yeah.
But you understand it fundamentally. So we'll work from there.
Yeah.
And like that's the challenge. It's the challenge.
Yeah. I do feel like because our kids are about the same age, and it is interesting as they get older, especially Ben, who's Cinco's age, and one of Cinco's good buddies. Like, he's starting to really push back on ideas and what you say and intention and logic. We have so many conversations with him about what stuff means, and like he's really big on. You said 15 minutes, and we left in 20. And I'm like, good. But you can feel him. And I think even to your dad's point, which I love, I'm going to think about that so much. But like, you have to engage that differently as a parent because they're not pushing back to be twits. They're pushing back because they're going like, hey, you said something.
Yeah.
Is that really what it is? Because
Yes.
I got to live this life that's got some reason and some fences.
Yeah.
And if you keep moving the fences, I'm going to go crazy because I don't know how I'm supposed to abide in that space. And I think it's interesting, having Annie and I get so taxed, because he'll want to really, and sometimes you just got to cut it off. You got I know what you're doing, and we ain't doing that tonight. Go to bed. But then other times you can really see that he's like, I don't understand something.
Yeah.
And you got to go, gosh, I've never had to explain this ever in my life.
And those are the moments you just kind of say, okay, God, take the wheel.
Jesus, take the wheel.
I don't want to explain this through my twisted brain.
That's right.
And my just trying to hang on with my grasp of it. Like I want this to be palatable and deep. You want it to be like a real moment that doesn't scar your kid.
Right.
And that has probably been one of the harder COVID related adventures since the whole family is tucked continually up under each other. Like there's not been a lot of dispersed energy, and there's been more time spent online. There's been more time just reading, and so they're asking different questions that you're not necessarily prepared to answer. Yeah. And so that has been a real-time development in our home that has been exhausting.
Yeah. I mean, I just want to say this to everybody out there listening, all you parents who are listening. Okay, I'm about to just bless you all, I hope. I really think this season is just life with an asterisk. It's like everything's got a little bit of grace and wiggle room because this is the first time in our lives that you've had something where, for a lot of us as parents, you've been with your kids for 3.5 months. And that's just never going to happen again, like every day. So there's going to be a snapping. There's going to be a point where you're like, I wonder if I could lock my kids outside, if they could figure out in a day or two how to get back in.
How long would they survive?
How long would they be okay in the basement?
The little one's back in 24 hours.
Oh yeah. Oh, Sam, our little about to be 4-year-old. He'd leave. He'd be like, finally, I can go start my life somewhere.
What have you been waiting on?
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
You were holding me back, guys.
I think one of my favorite texts that I've gotten in this pandemic was when you sent me a picture of fire in your yard, and it just said, "You should try this. It feels really good."
Yeah, I had some control over something.
And I laughed. I just said, "What are you doing?" You said, "I just really need to set something on fire."
Yeah. That is a true statement.
The feeling of like, because it was right about like a month and a half in where it's like everything is hitting critical mass. I just love that you're like, honey, I'll be back.
Yeah. And I started a massive fire.
I just stood there and stared at it.
Yeah. And then I spent the rest of the day on Twitter encouraging people to do the same thing.
All of a sudden you start following Ted Nugent.
my gosh. Okay, so we always end these with a couple of questions.
Okay.
Let me figure out which one of these I want to do.
True, false.
Okay.
Is there a true and false question?
John, why don't you go first? You have to pick, and I'll do the last one.
Okay. What would you say is the thing that makes you feel like you're a successful dad?
Ooh, when I'm about to walk out the door and my two daughters, whatever they're doing, they just run to the front door and they grab my neck and plant just the biggest, sloppiest, wettest kiss on my face. And then and I've tested this, if I don't do it, they stand on the front porch and they literally throw tantrums because they didn't get their goodbye hug and kiss.
Oh, yeah.
So that lets me know that like there's something
in there
that I'm doing that's right, because they know I'm going to go fend and fight, and their contribution to that is that hug and that kiss.
And when they give you that hug and that kiss, you're like, I could go do anything right now.
I will scale this mountain.
Yeah, I will bring the world to its knees.
I will burn something.
I will burn it all. Like that. It's rocket fuel.
Yeah.
It's rocket fuel.
Oh my gosh, that makes it
That's great.
Okay, so last question. I love this question. With your 3 kids, what do you want your kids to say at your funeral?
Ooh. Dad finally was a straight straw.
we know he's a straight straw right now. Up in heaven, walking the streets of gold. God straighten him out.
I want them to. That's tough. I want them to say that I lived life well. Like I enjoyed the small moments. I loved people well. I was a man of integrity, and that I really gave them the courage to be their authentic, true selves. Like that's my prayer.
I love that.
Yeah, that's my prayer. I mean, and it's tough. Like, and we've talked about that this entire time. Just giving them the tools to grow into who God has made that little person to be, and I pray that they look and that I would have molded them and shaped them and prepared a way that they may do that well. Yeah.
That'll preach.
Man, thank you so much for coming and doing this.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Great.
That is, I just want to tell you again, I don't know that I'm not going to be able to. I want to get a tattoo maybe. I think the first tattoo I may get is going to be of 13-year-old you on a wall with a BB gun.
On your right arm, and then on your left arm, there's going to be just shattered French
windows.
doors.
Oh, my gosh.
And a can on your chest. The can did not move.
No.
It is just a BB going over the can on the way to its French door. Oh, you're the man. Man. Thank you for doing this.
Oh, thank you for having me, guys.
All you wonderful, beautiful, kind people, thank you so much for listening to the episode.
If you have a second, please make sure to subscribe, rate, and write a review.
Unless it's bad.
Because that stuff really does matter.
And please follow us on socials. You can find us everywhere at Dadville Podcast.
Also, you can follow us each at Dave Barnes Music and at John McLaughlin to find out more about our music.
Thanks for listening.
Dadville.